This is Freeze, and you're watching Thorin season, and I would have been better than forgiven if I wouldn't get injured.
When you got to CLG, right, is this another scenario where, like, you had the right in? Because it looks like this is, like, essentially, like, if this didn't happen, maybe we're not sitting here having this conversation, right? That was kind of the big ticket back to the LCS.
Yeah, I had some options to, like, assistant coach and stuff like that at different LCS teams because, like, they just saw me do really well in Academy and just bring a team from, like, what, 10th, 9th to 3rd. So obviously I'm good at turning teams around. But what was good is Golden Guardians at the time basically had the coaching system that we ended up using, which was Anero as the head coach and then 5 positional coaches and all the players who would, you know, do their review, go to their positional coaches, and then get individual attention and then go back to practice. And I had Croissant as my assistant coach, and Jonathan Kamikaze was the general manager for Academy. So at the time, like, he was seeing us do really well. He was seeing the Golden Guardians team struggle. I talked to the Golden Guardians team all the time. I'd be like, yo, like, can I help somehow? Like, I just felt like if I was there, I could get them to do a lot better. But there were too many chefs in the kitchen. There were 6 coaches. So I just straight up told Kamikaze, I was like, dude, like, if I do this, if I get this same system in LCS, I promise you in like 3 years, we're going to be going to Worlds and be one of the best teams in the league. And he just trusted me based on what he saw me do in Academy. And then within 2 years, we fucking won LCS. So I like that. I saw the system that Golden Guardians had and the trust that Jonathan had in me to just recognize that, yeah, if I give this guy that system, we will probably be a very good team and probably do better than Golden Guardians based on like how they're using the structure.
The irony is, I actually do remember some people did actually flame in Arrow firing all those coaches and thought he just did like nepotism or whatever. So obviously people, do, as with any innovation, it's not until you actually start winning with it. People go, oh, maybe there's something to this. I should probably do this. So I know back in the day, even though people had tried positional coaches many times, and like Immortals had them, etc. I know one of the problems back in the day was getting buy-in from the players. Like if you had a big name player, he's not going to listen to someone who he thinks is a worse player than him, who's now coaching him and just telling him stuff about the matchup. Remember, the famous thing everyone always says about coaches is you can't teach them how to play the game, but essentially the positional coach on some level is guiding you with that. He's sometimes telling you about the matchups or what he's scouted, right? So what do you think the secret was to actually implementing this? Like, was it picking the players that were receptive to it? Was there a way to get a player to buy in? Is there something you have to kind of explain to them to get them to see the value?
Definitely a little bit of both. I think we did a really good job as a staff of making sure that we were just like a very big united front to the players. So all the coaches were on each other's pages. If your positional coach is going to be fucking annoying sometimes, you're going to show up after review and he's going to be like, you missed your war timer again. It's like, fuck, man. Like that's so annoying. Like, especially after you lose like maybe a frustrating game. But if every single coach is basically sharing like, yo, this stuff's like important, like we all have to do this together. Like if you do that correctly, and then your top laner does this correctly, and all these little things that you guys think are not super like important in the grand scheme of things, everyone does these things, then we're going to do a lot better. And then once you actually get that buy-in, it does get easier to just get like really quick improvement with positional coaches. So it's definitely important that from the start you set the tone, which we were able to do pretty well.
One of the cool things as well that you had, like you say, is you not only had a couple of years to like rev the engine up, as it were, but you kept some of the same players, which is also key, right? To not be switching. So if people don't know, almost immediately you had the top side that people know later won in NRG. You had Dorkly, you had Contracts, you had Palafox. Now, if people don't know, all 3 of these guys had been in the trenches of Academy and had gone up and down, bounced up and down, and had the moments where people, like if people don't know, the story the year before with Palafox, I actually know Jack, so I know this is a fact, is he was picking, do I buy perks for the $6 million or do I just go with this Palafox guy? He was going to actually put him in, but then obviously he doesn't get in, so he has to go and like grind out again, right? Who are these guys? Because I feel like they must have something more than just talent, right? If they've been able to like grind like that and come back up again, and they clearly stuck together. So give me some thoughts on these players if you could.
They're incredible. What's so funny is like the first split on CLG, it's not like we did well. We honestly didn't do very well, but I only took the job at CLG because I just straight up made them understand, look, we might not do well for a year, but we'll set the groundwork. We'll do better year 2. And then, like I said, year 3, we're going to be for sure a world-class team. And they just trusted that. So year 1 was just all about improvement. We tried to pinpoint the 5 players we can get that we think by year 2 are going to be very, very talented and very good in the scene. And year one, it might take some time. We might struggle, but we will get there. And so we pinpointed that these players, they have what it takes if we give them the resources. And my hats off to them. They grinded their ass off. We had to convince Dokla to even come to our academy team. He was gonna, I think, join TL instead. Right. I forget. And but we convinced him to come to our academy team. He won MVP in Challenger, promoted him to LCS. We ended up getting we were top 4 in the season in summer that year. But yeah, those players were incredible. They trusted us and this system that we created to kind of help them get to their top level of play. And they bought into it. And then they were heavily rewarded for it when they popped the fuck off last year and, won their championship, beat G2 beat G2 to make it the quarterfinals. They're just incredible players. And I don't want to make it seem like it was easy, because we struggled for a decent part of that. There were some dark times in many of the splits, but we put our heads down and we fucking went to work. And at the end of the day, that's what you have to do in League of Legends.
Give me some thoughts on Palafox, because one thing I noticed when this team was popping off and winning LCS and going to Worlds is one thing I was quite impressed with is, like you said, a lot of LCS players typically actually became passive when it was a world scenario. I noticed this guy actually looked like the opposite. He always went for the move, the decisive player. Even if, by the way, you can throw the game doing that, that's also how we won some of these games.
Yeah, he really stepped up at Worlds. At a lot of the different games, actually in the beginning, he was kind of getting smurfed on by some of the mid laners, but he immediately was going back to film. He'd be damn, I really need to think more about how I throw my Nico Qs in lane. And he was just really, really thinking about how he can lane better. And Damonte at the time was helping him a lot in terms of changing him from being a more selfish player in terms of getting himself resources to being more of okay, you have pressure, you have opportunity to help your team and snowball and make these proactive plays, even though it might not be good for your specific matchup, it's really good for the game. And it just all clicked for him at Worlds. He was really insane. Him and Contracts played an insanely good mid-jungle game, and they were able to kind of get advantages in almost all the games we played.
By the way, one of the positional coaches I definitely want to ask about is actually an old mate of mine. It's sOAZ, the legendary EU top laner. Now, here's another player where, look, I never would have guessed he'd be a coach, because as a player, he had the ultimate fuck-off attitude. In fact, famously even said coaches don't exist back in the day when I used to know him. But I will say, another mega smart player about how to play the game, right?
Very, very, very smart. He is he's such a deep understanding of mid game and how to make sure you have tempo and use your advantages to basically give yourself so many opportunities by playing side lane correctly. And it's funny, after every year, we obviously do interviews with all the players and coaches. And after every split, Dokla's he's the GOAT, man. He's just the GOAT. Dokla has so much respect for him, and sOAZ has helped Dokla's play so much over their not a very long time together. And it's just very clear how smart sOAZ is just from watching us play. So hats off to sOAZ. That guy, he really is just an insanely good top positional coach. He can honestly do more. I think teams are kind of fucking up by not coming after some of our positional coaches and giving them assistant strategic coach or head coach opportunities elsewhere.
Initially, the bot lane in the first year for this team was also quite interesting, because it was Luger, who people remember was actually a real talent. People were talking about as a top player. And then Poome was the guy who famously Papa Smithy hyped up, right? So who were these guys?
They smurfed on everyone in the academy. They were the 100 Thieves bot lane who just every single game they'd show up to lane and just solo kill their opponent. Their jungler would come down, they'd dive their opponent. They just turboed everyone in academy. And so yeah, right off the bat, we knew that was going to be our bot lane, Luger Poome. And they had ups and downs. I think there were a lot of games where they just carried us, where the game was kind of lost, and then Luger put his carry pants on and he just kind of 1v9 the game. But there are also games where they weren't as stable as we needed them to be. When you're just a bot lane as a professional, you need some type of stability. So they were more of an X factor. If you needed kind of a 1v9 bot lane sometimes, and then we're kind of okay with them kind of maybe messing up sometimes, that was a very good bot lane to go towards. Because Luger definitely did just carry some absolutely unwinnable games for us on Jinx and stuff like that, where we're down 5,000-6,000 gold. He gets IE for 1 minute before his opponent, and then we just take a 5v5 and he kills everyone. So very, very explosive. That's how I'd say that bot lane. They're very explosive.
It's funny because when you know that this team eventually with the different core the next year is able to win, well, you look back and the telltale signs are there. Like if people don't know, in this summer, even though on paper it's like we just came 5th to 6th, you lost 2 5-game series to Cloud9 who won the LCS, and then that TL Super Team that was like $7 million and like star-studded names. Like it was really close to being something special the first year, right?
Yeah, it was really sad. A lot of the players they've always gotten close. Like it's just like, oh, they made it to game 5. Like we're so close, but like you never actually do it. And like after a time, that really wears you down to the point where you actually start to develop a little bit of a mental block. It's like, okay, well, we're up 2-0, and then you lose the third game. It's like, oh my god, like are we gonna get fucking reverse swept? And so it really eats away at you. And it sucks that we couldn't make it work any of the previous splits because we were really close to really making it work. But it did take a roster change and us kind of like figuring things out and changing how we played just a little bit to really give us the consistency we needed in a best of 5 to get over the hump.
Tell me a little bit about your assistant coach, Croissant, because he's actually one of the people that I've had on my shows years and years and years ago. I think it was like LS once saw like a video of him. So he's one of those people. I used to always try and grab people that hadn't been around in the scene to see if they got any. And I can tell you, I brought this guy on my shows many times because he's one of those people where, like, if you just give him the topic, he can talk forever about League of Legends. He's one of those people who actually, unironically, likes all the things that I think most people think are boring as fuck, like jungle pathing and studying in VOD and stuff like. Yeah, it's the kind of nerd you want as assistant coach, right?
Yeah, he's really smart. He can definitely talk about anything for a very long time. But when I was interviewing assistant coaches for Golden Guardians Academy, I had like a few different candidates, and Croissant was one of them. His interview took like 3 times longer than anyone else's, but he was the only one who actually hit every single VOD review point that I had written down. And so it took him a long time, but like he did hit every single point that I had down. And I was like, all right, I mean, like this is who you want to work with. This is someone who is going to be meticulous. He's going to have a good work ethic. He's going to hit everything that you want to hit and trust that he's teaching the players the correct things. And we built pretty good synergy in Golden Guardians Academy. I think over time we've like improved our synergy, but he's incredibly smart. He will outwork everyone in the room. He will have tons and tons of ideas. Sometimes the players might not agree with all of them, but he will have certain ideas that do really click and get the players to see the game in a specific way. And it's just so infectious, his work ethic. So I think Croissant is one of the best in the business for sure. And he's like one of the big reasons why we've done so well in terms of growth over the past 2.5 years. Like there's no way we would have this type of success without him.
One thing you referenced there, which is a point I'd like to draw out a little bit more, is I actually think this is also another telltale sign that you have the approach correct to finding people, because I famously did an interview with Peter Dunn where he told me that when he went to apply to be like head coach of some big LCS teams, he obviously went to Evil Geniuses in the end, he said one of the things that shocked him was EG and I think one other org were the only ones that even asked questions about the game. The rest of it was just almost like sort of like a get to know you interview, and then if they liked you, they'd hire you. Like what you're saying here is like, if people don't know, that's like more like what it's like if you're trying to get like MIT. You're not just going to go to an interview. Like they're going to set you a bunch of questions and give you a little paper to do, and they're going to actually test your skills and see if you know what the fuck you're talking about. Like that's actually pretty key. I think people kind of miss that, right? You don't just hire the guy because of what his resume does. You want to see how his mind works, right?
100%. We were definitely one of the first teams that just had like it was kind of annoying. Like maybe applicants didn't like it, but it was the only way we could actually measure how good they were at their job. And so we would have like we'd be like, we're going to have you go over these 2 games in our interview, and we'd send them the games ahead of time, and then they'd come on and basically let us know how, like, what they know about the game. So for sure, I think it's insane to have any type of interview process with a coach that's supposed to help with strategy at some point, and not talk about the game. That is just like, to me, that's the bare minimum. How can you even hire someone if you don't know firsthand how they see the game?
When the team came the next year, people will forget that the storyline was mega subtle. Like the spring split was all right. And then crucially, the summer one's obviously the one I want to ask about. And it goes like this. Dude, everyone at the end, by the time you won LCS, and especially when you beat G2 Worlds, everyone was magically like a born-again NLG fan. Like, I always believed in them. But I remember how that split began, mate. The meme was, even when you would beat the top teams, it was like, well, that's why they used to be Counter Logic, because they can only beat the top teams, but they're so bad they can't beat any of the other. Actually, everyone was kind of meming on this team. You know, it was near the bottom of the league. Like, people were trying to kind of treating it like it was a joke. And I think because of that famous story with the old GM who'd said some silly things, I think people were still kind of hating on CLG CLG and was sort of like, what a waste of time. Like, in fact, all the people saying later, great to have NA talent, were like, why are we reusing these players from Academy? Like, did you get a similar sense? But I think before you won the split, no one really gave you a chance.
I mean, for sure. We got a ton of negative press because everyone loves CLG. Who the fuck is Energy?
Sure.
We started out 3-6, and everyone was like, why did they change out Luger and Poome? Like, Luger and Poome were part of why the team was so good. We just got top 4. Like, why are we changing stuff? And yeah, once we started winning, it's easy to root for a team that's winning and is underdogs every single game. But at first, people were not happy at all. We would get DMs from people about how upset they are. I remember I went to we were 3-6, and I went out one night, and like a fan came up to me and was like, dude, like, you guys are 3-6, like, what's happening? Like, you guys are so bad.
Like a bar or something.
Christ.
Holy shit, right?
Like, Jesus Christ, man. Like,
right.
Like, are we talking about something else?
I know, sure.
But yeah, we ended up going 9-9 that split. It's not like we were dominating. We just spiked at the right time, like I was talking about. Like, we figured out that, like, as long as you have good momentum going to playoffs, that's really what matters the most. And we really rode the underdog mentality. And once, I think we were a very likable team. Our core is very likable. It's very likable to have like this NA core that is kind of like NA's last hope for the young people to get through Academy, grind it out, and then actually achieve their dreams of winning LCS and going to Worlds. So it's a very likable core. But people were definitely not happy with us when we were not winning.
Right, as you said there, at the time, because in CLG the perception was like, we have to hope Luger 1v9's the game, basically. Yeah. Everyone was raged as fuck when these players got replaced. But I will say, this is another example where people have got to stop looking at one split and look at someone's whole career. Because if I tell you now, guys, that they replaced them with FBI, probably one of the best, like, fucking, like, non-resident people to be allowed to play an LCS ever. Like, look at his record, he's in all those finals. And then also, Ignar's pretty fucking good, guys, especially at the LCS level. Like, he's cracked on engaged champions, like, these are just good players that you have to take an upgrade like that if it's available, right?
They were insane. They were everything we wanted. FBI, it's because like we said before, everyone has short-term memory. And the split before, he was on EG. That EG team was expected to win the whole thing, and they didn't. So I was like, oh my god, like FBI is so overrated. And then we were able to get him on like a one-split contract, which was insane. Energy really helped us a lot with that, and we were able to get Ignar, and it was just such. Once we started playing well, it was so clear that the dynamic of the team made so much more sense in terms of just how everyone wanted to play the game. And yeah, they were insane. I think FBI is still underrated somehow.
Sure.
And is just an insanely good player.
Oh, his resume is actually bonkers. He's another one of those players where I would challenge some people to like quickly list off the top of your head what he did, and you'll think, oh, he like won once, but he didn't, mate. He was in loads of finals, been to Worlds a bunch of times. He's had a mega. One thing I'd ask about him is like one thing that is obvious if you have an eye test, he has fucking really good mechanics, but also like there's certain champions he was just really good on that. Like at the time, I mean, famously, even people like Danny couldn't play stuff like the Aphelios, right? There's stuff that this guy would just add down to a T, right?
Yeah, he's insane. When he went to Korea one year, Keria thought that he was so insane at the time that Keria started doing with him. Like he is just so good in lane on his champions, and like you said, there's some champions that where if he gets them in a good spot, the game just feels simple. It's like, you know, that if you play around him, you get him resources, he's gonna play out the team fights pretty well, and we're just gonna get into a spot where we're very comfortable and we have a good shot of winning the game. And that's what you need from a world-class ADC. You need that type of trust and that ability to be that rock for your team. And FBI he's very good at that.
One of the cool things about this playoff run as well is not only did you guys come in kind of like undervalued, but everyone thought that pretty much the top 3 for Worlds was just set. And so you guys upset the barrel again and again. And I noticed every time you did an upset, still no one thought you could win. They were like, wow, that team's really bad that they lost. What the hell? Cloud9 lost. How's that possible? What the Golden Guardians? They were supposed to be great. And like, no one ever gave you any credit till you won the bloody LCS. Can you give me some thoughts on this? First of all, this playoff run, and then also, were there some like key adaptations to beating these teams? These were the best teams at the time.
Oh, for sure. Our prep was 10 out of 10. I think we made every other team in LCS just kind of look like they weren't doing any type of preparation at all. Croissant and our coaching staff, we just out-prepped almost every single team to a T, and every single best of 5, we prioritized different champions. So there wasn't a single best of 5 where the enemy team came into it and actually thought we were going to pick something and we picked it. We changed things up every single best of 5, and that's why after we won finals, Dokla was like, yeah, we spent the whole season pretending like we don't play carry top, we don't play Rumble, we don't play Jax, and then we picked them in finals, and then we won. It's just like we threw such big curveballs almost every single series, and teams just weren't ready for that at all. So I think our prep was really good, and then obviously our players they stepped up. They played very well. Their fundamentals were on point. Every single game I'd get DMs being like, oh my god, like everyone played so well. Yeah, they just stepped up. They played really well, and that was like the first split that Contracts, Palafox, Dokla, like they finally got over that hump of like winning best of fives, making it to the winners bracket. Contracts gave a speech, I think it was before maybe our Golden Guardians, or maybe his first TL series, where before the series even started, we're all huddling together, and he's like, guys, like this is the year, like I know that we can do it. And like he started tearing up because like it meant so much to him to actually win a best of five and make it to like top 4, top 3 in playoffs and make a run. And he really felt that like this was going to be the split that we were good enough to do it. And even FBI after that was like, damn, like after I saw Contracts tear up, like it really lit a fire beneath me because I understood how much it meant to everyone on this team to actually make a run and do something special.
Plus, I think the other thing that made people at the last second still just like pull back on believing in NRG was obviously when you guys lost to Cloud9 in the upper bracket, they looked great, right? And at the time, if people forget, that was supposed to be a Cloud9 super team. That was the one where they had like, Blabber was obviously a stud, but MNS, people will meme on him now. There's a reason he was picked up, guys. I've heard loads of like European teams want this guy. He was like a demon in scrims, everyone said. And obviously, people know what Berserker can do. Like on paper, you're not supposed to beat this team in the final. So give me some thoughts on winning against this squad.
Yeah, MNS was like, he was so good at laning, especially when he first came into LCS. He would outlane everyone, and he would get really big leads on his champions. And when we lost the best of 5 against Cloud9 in upper bracket, that was actually the series I actually thought we didn't have very good preparation. So as soon as we lost that series, honestly, I was pretty confident after that because I was like, okay, well, some of these games are pretty close, and they showed a lot of their tools that they didn't show us before in draft. And so after that, I was like, all right, I know everything. I know what this team is going to play for in grand finals. I know what they want to do. The next time we play them, I promise you guys we're going to win. Like, it was just so clear in my head that our prep is going to be so much better the next time. And once we made it to finals, I think we lost the first game. We did some like experimental draft because it was hard to win on red side. But even that game, C9 had such a good draft and they struggled to actually win the game against us. So like we're in the back room. I'm just like, guys, like I promise you guys, we can beat this fucking team. Like they're really not playing that well. We're going to get a really good draft game too, which we did. And then after that, the confidence was just really high. Like Dokla won on Jax. Game 2, I was like, okay. And Croissant, we were just like, all right, we're just going to slam Jax 1, 2, 3. They don't know how to beat Dokla's Jax. And yeah, it was incredible. The players just got so much confidence every single game, and it really helped in order to take down Cloud9 at the end.
The other match I want to ask about is the lower bracket final against Team Liquid, because people have to remember who was playing for Team Liquid. Like, the idea that, like, your top side would beat out theirs is ridiculous. Like, Summit, people remember he did smurf on the LCS with Cloud9 before he fucked off again. He was a great player in Korea, and Pioshik was literally the world champion at this time. Like, the idea of Dokla and Contracts saying, like, out fucking beat these guys is kind of epic. So, what was even the mindset in a series like that? I know a lot of other coaches would just be cynical and be like, right, you've lost top side, basically, play through fucking bot or something, right?
Yeah, also earlier when we beat TL in our first best of 5 in playoffs, Dokla did well like the first maybe game or two, but then like game 3 and game 4 he started like, messing up a few times and Summit was being Summit. But we ended up winning that series. But the second time we played them in lower bracket finals, that was when we started playing Rumble and all this shit and putting attention to the top lane, and they just did not expect that at all. And so Dokla was coming out of lane ahead, or he was neutralizing Summit. They had no like leads to play off of from top lane. And even though that ended up going 5 games, we were pretty confident going into that. Game 4 was an absolute the worst game we've ever played. So even though it was a best of 5 or won 5 games, it still felt like it was like a 3-1. We just had to kind of get our shit together.
Right. One of the weird things about this run at Worlds is you actually did end up playing Weibo in the quarters, but you also played them in the opening game. Like, when you got that draw, even though later the draw gets awesome, the initial draw looks like, well, fuck, like that's one life gone, right?
Yeah. They were good. I think they also had really good preparation. So my hats off to the coaches. I think they were one of the best prep teams in the entire tournament. Which sucked because that was one of our biggest strengths, was to be able to out-prep the opponent.
Right.
But that was the only team we lost to at Worlds. We fucking lost to Weibo 4 times. We beat anyone else we played against. So it sucks. I think that we could have played better against them. We probably could have taken at least a few games off of them. But they were really good, and my hats are just off to them. I think we all learned a lot from playing against them. We were a little bit too disrespectful at certain points in the draft where we probably shouldn't have been. We were a little bit too disrespectful sometimes in game. So it was annoying that we played them 4 times, but it was a pretty good learning experience overall.
Right, you seem like a pretty reasonable person. It's kind of wild that you draw as Team Liquid. The team you've just beaten a whole bunch of comes to your read. That's a pretty nice draw in the second round, right?
That was amazing. As soon as we drew them, I remember talking to our coaches and being like, this is such the best case scenario. We get to play a team we've already beat to get our first win at Worlds, to get some confidence, and then we know that, like, we know how to win on world stage. Like, it's so important to players to get your first win, because in the back of your head, it's like, oh my God, like, let's not go 0-3. Let's not go 0-3. It'd be so embarrassing to go 0-3. So we won that first game, and then it's so much easier to actually play well.
Now, the funny thing is, because they became, along with Team Liquid, like a team that drew a lot of iron, Mad Lions, because everyone's like, oh, these teams were just shit and didn't turn up. Everyone's going to forget. They were the fucking champions in the spring split in the Europe, guys. Like, they weren't bombs. Like, this is a team, by the way, that has some, like, legendary players on that have been champions themselves. Like, even though this isn't the same as drawing, like, a Korean team, it's still, it's not like a total chomp. And actually, you guys did kind of murk them in this game, right?
Yeah, it was good. We messed up a few times. It could have been cleaner, but that was also like an amazing step, right? Because we played TL, you know, training wheels on. We got our first win. Then we played Mad Lions, and it's like, okay, good EU team, not like insanely good, but still good. But that's still like a step up. Now we can beat international team, even though like and then gain confidence playing against international teams. So that was like the perfect next team for us to draw. And then for it to be capped with us drawing G2, it's like, okay, we beat an EU team already. Now we're going to play against another EU team. We know that we can compete internationally. So in terms of confidence, it really was like the perfect 1-2 draw to lead into like a strong international team to beat.
Here's the thing, I'll return the favour, I'll be reasonable, even though I'm from Europe. So what I'll say is this, even though I do think that like the rest of G2's draw was mental because they just only got like Asian teams, what no one can ever deny is this. They must have loved getting you guys initially and thought, actually, that's our fucking win. We're going to be in the playoffs. Like, this is the dream. Like, again, in theory, that's a better draw for them. There's loads of other like Asian teams they could have drawn instead. But you guys didn't just beat them, Thinkcard. One of those games, you absolutely destroyed them. I don't know if they've ever been destroyed that hard ever, like in Caps' whole career. Like, that was amazing. That game. Give me some thoughts.
Yeah, it was great. We got everything we wanted in that draft. We got Sanity K to Kaisa, which that was the best matchup we could think of for Sanity K. I can't believe they didn't ban it, but we greeted it. We picked our entire top side 1, 2, 3, and then the 4, 5 they didn't ban Senna, even though they had Kaisa and they've seen us play Senna before. So we took a huge gamble. It paid off. So that was good scouting. And then the players just played really well. That was like, we put all our eggs in one basket. We've never shown Nico Prio before that game, and we got everything we wanted. And just right off the bat, I think they got like first blood or something, and we were kind of nervous. But as soon as we hit level 6, we had like that crazy 2v3 on mid, and after that, the game was fucking wraps. We played macro perfectly. Everyone was conserving their tempo. Ignar is always really on point with just his ward timers because Ignar is just insanely good player. And then once you get that first win, it's like shit. Like, we can actually beat this team.
One thing as well, I think now has even aged better is obviously they've stayed together and they just fucking run the table in Europe. Like, they just win every split for fun pretty much. And if people don't know, their coach is pretty much legendary for being like a draft wizard who just baits everyone in the picks. Like, that has to be a very validating win in your career because obviously you made the playoffs in doing so, right?
Yeah, I mean, I've drafted against him before. I think he's very, very good. He's very good at playing to his players' strengths, and which is an entire skill to itself. Some coaches, like, they pick compositions that like are very good on paper, but doesn't play to their team strengths. Dylan does a very good job of picking comps that do play to his team strengths, which I respect a lot. But yeah, it felt really good. And then I felt like they made an adjustment going into game 2 where they picked Orin. They're like, okay, like, we're just going to play a little bit more patient and try to scale and have like these really, you know, front to back team fights, but we navigated it super well. We played to our conditions. We had to pick Sivir. That was like the only pick that we could have picked in that situation. And even though FBI doesn't have that many games on it, he was like, yeah, let's fucking do it. He agreed. We had to play the champion. And then, yeah, Palafox had a great Talia game. It was super nice to see. So hats off to everyone. I think G2 probably could have played a little bit better, but they also were probably really taken aback that we were actually a good team, because for some reason, even by the time we were 2-1 at Worlds, everyone still thought we weren't a good team. So they probably under-prepped. They didn't expect us to actually be good at macro, be good at team fighting, and so they were taken surprised by a lot of things.
Along these lines then, once you made the playoffs, well, one cool thing people might not know about Worlds is, one of the ways the meta always gets influenced is, you obviously practice the teams on the other side of the bracket because you're going to only meet them in the final. Does that mean, considering the other side of the bracket was mega stacked, did you actually get to play against like T1 and Scrims and fucking LNG, and did you get to play these teams, like the top teams in the world?
Yeah, of course. We would honestly, T1 kind of liked us. They would joke around and chat with us. There's one time our internet boomed, and then they came to our room and started joking, like laughing with us. And then I think Contracts and maybe Juves, our positional coach, went to their room and started taking pictures together. So we were honestly on really good terms with T1. So we had a lot of scrims with T1 and some of the other top teams. So this is like some insider information on like draft and stuff. We actually played against T1 playing Aphelios Melio against our Senate TK, but we actually did really well in that game. So we were kind of warned in a sense that Weibo was going to play Aphelios Melio against us into our Senate TK, but we just disrespected it. We were like, all right, like we beat it. Like it's chill. We already know what to expect. Like, but in the back of like our coaches' heads, we were like, damn, like that did seem like a pretty good counter. Like if they don't mess up these few times. So we were kind of warned in a sense by them that it was going to be back to range supports. But yeah, we just, like I said, we disrespected a little bit against Weibo.
Even though, as you said, the thing that sucked is you only lost to Weibo because you just played them in the opening game and then these 3 games in the playoffs. Yeah. At the same time, though, like that's still a good draw out of the teams that are in the playoffs. Remember, like they're all the monsters, like JDG and fucking. Like, you had to think like there's a chance. And in fact, the other thing I'll add as well is people will see it's a 3-0 and maybe they remember the last game where like Zhao Hu smurfs on Jace. The rest of the series was mega competitive. Those first 2 games, you were right in them. These were games that were getting extended to mid to late game and like proper players, etc. People had kills.
Yeah, game 1, we fucking took Baron. We took Baron up like 2,000 gold. Very winnable game. Legit, like, we easily could have won game 1. Game 2, I think the draft was actually kind of hard, but we made it through the difficult part in the game, and we were actually doing quite well. So game 2 was very winnable. Game 3 kind of collapsed, but 100% agreed. Like, it's not like if we went against other teams in the bracket, we would have had an easier time. We were pretty happy that we chose Weibo because we already played against them once. We know what we're playing against, and they seemed more vulnerable than other teams in the tournament.
A lot of people from the LCS have been to Worlds but never experienced the playoffs. Famously, NA doesn't get out of the groups that often. So I'll ask you this question. Is it a different feel to be on the stage of a Worlds and to be like in a match thinking like I can go to the semis? Or is it a different vibe from group stage, from LCS, etc.?
Yeah. Well, once you get to quarterfinals, honestly, no matter what team you're on, once you get to quarterfinals, you have that thing in the back of your head that's just like anything can happen. Legit, like the team can have a bad day that you're playing against. You can have a good day. You can both have good days, but maybe you still play really well and just win. So at that point, anything can happen. It's just such a crazy feeling that every single day, if you play well, you just like you can just go to semis, and then it's just like holy shit, like NA in semis, that's insane. So it is a different feeling. I did go to quarterfinals before on C9 after we made back in 2016 when we made LCS. Jack brought me to Worlds to help their LCS team, and so we did go to quarterfinals that year where we got absolutely demolished by Samsung. That was probably one of the most hopeless series I've ever tried to coach. But I did make it to quarterfinals before. It is crazy to go to quarterfinals and be on that stage and just like damn, like these really are the top 8 teams. Like you mess up once or twice, the game is very difficult. Like these teams are fucking good.
As well as playing the Aphelios Melio, then they also in Game 3 pulled out the fucking Caitlyn-Heimderdinger bot lane. Like, it's funny, these guys didn't just play like straight up. Like, they were kind of cooking the draft themselves, right?
I think, like I said, I think they had good prep. They understood that like we wanted to play engaged supports for Ignar. We wanted to kind of scale into these really good 3v3s and like 4v4 compositions, and they picked comps that didn't let us do that. And I think they had a good sense of what to play against us and how to beat us in a best of 5. That's why I have such big respect for their coaching staff. So, but yeah, they were cooking for sure.
This is an obvious question, but obviously it's a narratively pleasing one, so I'll ask it anyway. If you're someone who's bounced between LCS and Academy, and then you've even had splits where people didn't hire you at all, you went to Worlds, but it was the memed on 0-6-1, they didn't win a game, major region fail. It's got to be baller to not only win the LCS, but go to fucking top 8 of Worlds, beat GT. This has to be very validating stuff in your career.
Yeah, 100%. It's awesome. For all the people that do bounce between like LCS and Academy, like, that's life. Sometimes you're going to be knocked down and then you have to prove yourself again. And I think a lot of people get kind of too frustrated to just put their heads down and put in the work and just prove that like you were better than your peers or you're better than your competition, no matter what level you're at, because they're used to a different level of success. But you're going to have to do that multiple times in your life, most likely. So like fucking get used to it. If you go push on to Academy like Doka or like contracts like Palafox, like I was, you're gonna have to put your head down and prove that you're better than the people that you're around. So it was very, very nice to finally, you know, win LCS, make it the quarterfinals, beat G2, all these things. It's really validating. But the best feeling is that it does justify basically all the hard work you put in to actually get there.
Is it the case that when Weibo then made their own miracle run to the final, did that make you feel a bit better about losing to them?
Oh, of course. As soon as you lose to a team, you're like, all right, I hope they win the whole thing so that we can say we lost to the champions. Sure. Yeah, but they fucking stepped up. They made it to finals. They even played pretty well in finals. But yeah, they, like I said, another shout out to their coaching staff. They really just popped the fuck off when they made it to Worlds.
What about after this, the downside, the sort of doomer moment is you just had all this success, everyone's riding high, but then the dreaded term esports winter kicked in, right? And everyone knows. Yeah. I mean, there's a whole reason why the LCS had to walk out. There's a whole reason why people had to cut rosters and bring in budget players. Like famously EG just cut a whole super team and just brought in nobodies and randoms that were just willing to play, basically. Like, when this happens, isn't it the case, I mean, you could correct me if I'm wrong here, isn't this the case that basically you couldn't do the same approach? You couldn't have all the positional coaches. You couldn't do the system you had to some degree, right?
Yeah, we lost we lost 2 coaches. We brought 1 more on. So it wasn't like a huge change. We did get rid of our management and then kind of make a hybrid role. So Croissant is now like manager and strategic coach. So like we tried to basically consolidate budget to try to maintain our coaching structure. But yeah, it was different for sure. I think the biggest thing that impacted us was it's so different coming into a split with expectations versus being the underdog. And it's really easy to just say that, but like experiencing that, everyone just expected to win. Like I remember watching Contracts do an interview. It was like, what's your 90% prediction, 50% prediction, and 10%? It was like 90% prediction, like Energy wins the split again. It's like, holy shit, like that number is really high. Like even if you are like, even if you're G2, 90% is a really fucking high percentage. So it's just everyone expected to win. And when we weren't getting those results, like it manifested in frustration, all these different things. And that was also the first time that I've won LCS. So like my ability to navigate that situation, I've never experienced that before either. So I think I learned a lot. I think our coaches learned a lot. And more importantly, like our players as well. So I do think we just navigated the split incorrectly from a practice standpoint and from a mentality standpoint. And hopefully, like, I am pretty hopeful going into summer. But it did suck going from just being the underdog where you win every game. Everyone's like, oh my God, I love this team, to like, you win a game. It's like, yeah, that's what's expected. You're supposed to win these games.
I do want to ask you about the guy you referenced earlier. I've actually done an interview with him on my channel, the Mind Body Esports guy, Edward Cleland, because he has this really, if people don't know, he has a bonkers resume. He's even winning Counter-Strike, guys. Yeah. But bizarrely, everyone just lets him go after they win the championship or one split. No one retains him for some reason. Give us some thoughts on working with this guy. What's the secret sauce?
He just understands the process from start to finish. Like he's also not one of those people that comes in and pretends like he knows how to do your job better than you do. He doesn't know anything about League. He probably doesn't know anything about Counter-Strike or much about Counter-Strike, but he understands what he does know, which is like how to structure things, how to make sure like you understand how different players learn in different situations, the priority you need to have on relationships and the priority you need to have on just atmosphere in general. And like, how do you start a day? How do you end a day to make sure that people have a greater odds of remembering the learning points throughout the day. So he has such a good understanding of those aspects, not to mention the one-on-ones he does with players when he talks to them and like make sure like things aren't bugging them, or he can figure out what is bugging them, and then he can kind of help the coaches work through that so that we can be more productive in the future. He just understands the whole process so well, and that's why I credit him so much with what I've learned just in terms of those aspects of coaching.
One player change that obviously did change from Worlds to this split was support position, because obviously Ignar went off. If people don't know, he plays in LEC now, and along came huhi, who was obviously on Golden Guardians. Like, I think he's actually someone where, because he himself was like considered like a meme early in his career, I don't think people have ever really given huhi his full flowers as well. Like, thing about him, as far as I know, isn't he quite a cerebral player? People say he has like a very good like read for what to do in the game and stuff.
He's a very good leader. Yeah, I mean, I remember last year when before we picked up FBI, I was looking at all of our options and I was like, holy shit, like huhi's been to like the last 3 finals or something, and no one even kind of recognizes him for that at all. Like, he literally went to 3 finals in a row in NA and no one's talking about it. So he does have a good track record in North America. He's very good at leading and saying what he wants to do at a base and like basically getting people to follow his plan. I think something that we did kind of struggle a little bit as a team is like he came in and was like, okay, this is a world-class team. I'm going to try to blend into their style, which I don't think was easy for him. And I don't think we really did that well as a group. So we need to find a balance of like getting huhi to show off his strength of being a good leader, and us also not feeling like we're pigeonholed to like the way that only huhi wants to play the game, because we have a lot of creative players. Like, obviously Contracts and Palafox, like they have certain ways they like to play. So it did take us a long time to find a good balance. But yeah, I'm still confident going to summer. I told a bunch of people right after we lost in spring, like, I swear to God, if we had 2 more weeks of practice, we would have won the whole split. But we just weren't efficient enough early on in the season to get those good 2 weeks of productive practice.
Even though, unfortunately, 100 Thieves themselves fell apart in the playoffs and didn't make the big run, people are going to forget they were top 2 in the split, and then your series, because you were start low bracket, was a 5-gamer. Like, again, like as you say, it wasn't that far from doing something good. Yeah,
I mean, I don't think 100 Thieves is actually that good of a best of 5 team. They were very surprising in best of 1s, and my hat's off to them. I think they did a really good first step in a roster rebuild where they have a lot of young players and some veterans. So, like, very, very good job by them. But yeah, our series went to 5 games. We probably still should have won that series. I think our game 5 was in a really good spot, and then we made like a very, very large mistake that lost us the game. But yeah, I think legitimately we were very close to just making a run in playoffs again. But we just weren't efficient enough, like I said, early on in the season.
I know you haven't been with them for that long, but I can say from knowing people who have coached, like I know some people in Counter-Strike and Valorant who've coached within the NRG org, they actually all rave about the org, dude. Like, they all love that Andy Miller guy. They say, like, essentially it's one of the only, like, sensible orgs that feels like it's run by adults, and they don't just do stuff like, you have a bad week, like, kick that guy or fire him or whatever. They don't make crazy shit. Do they empower you? Have you had a good relationship so far?
I mean, they trust us. They clearly trust us. They brought us on. Imagine you buy an LCS spot, and it's like, okay, this is the only team, by the way, that has fucking 8 coaches, which is twice as much as anyone else. And then now they have to pay like that much more money to keep them on board. Like, that is a crazy amount of trust to have just in a structure in general. And yeah, after the bad split, like, obviously we underperformed, but they weren't annoying about it. They're like, okay, like, what are we feeling like going to summer? Are we going to make any changes? Are you guys still confident? Like, what do you guys want to do? So my hat's off to them. They have a lot of trust in their coaching staff across every single team they've had. They're one of the, in Overwatch, they like, I think they kept like the majority of the same coaching staff throughout the whole time. Right. Sometimes they'd have coaches leave, and then they'd honestly hire them back when they're looking for jobs again. So they are very loyal to their coaching staff. And once you build, like, once you show you know what you're doing and they can trust you, they're very loyal. And that is an insanely valuable thing in esports when stability is almost impossible to find.
Because you're in the coaching world now, and it is a way of thinking about the game. Like I often tell people, if you ever know people who are coaches or analysts, they can't watch a game normally, like they would in a bar, like a sports game. Their brain's always trying to analyze the game and pick it apart and stuff, right? Have you totally changed to the coach mindset? Like whenever you, for example, when you watch contracts play a lease in game, does it ever bring back the itch of like, oh, I used to play that role, or like, oh, fuck, that's a sick, it's inseccy hit. So do you ever get like the player feel again? Does that ever come to the surface?
I used to get that a lot all the time. Whenever I talk to players that want to become coaches, or I'm interviewing them, and it's like, yeah, I just want to become a coach. Like, I really try to make sure they understand that like you are gonna get that feeling that you'll be watching a game, and be like, I can fucking do that better. But honestly, after 10 years, it has kind of gone away. I don't feel that anymore. But early on my FlyQuest days, my EchoFox days, even my Dig days, I'd be watching something on the TV and be like, oh my fucking God. Like if I was playing this game, like we'd be doing so much better. So I used to get that. But now I understand my job, and I respect the strengths that players bring to teams.
People are going to think it's sort of a cheesy or cliched sort of feel-good kids movie. The idea that you go through the grind and the ups and downs, and you have some success, but you get fired, and then you work with this person, you have to reunite years later, and then eventually you get to win and you have the success at the end. But what people don't maybe realize, if they've never been through like a journey like that in life, is almost everyone, as far as I know, who's succeeded, the joke is it never is a straight line. It's always an up and down. And the idea is, I think if you have the right mindset, I'll say from my personal experience, it's finding a way to take the L, but actually take the lesson from it and then make it so that you don't lose in that way again, or it levels you up in a way, right? Has this been a sort, when you look back now and reflect, do you kind of see like a path of like even these like bad moments or getting kicked or losing here that taught me the thing that got me to the next level there? Do you have that sense?
Yeah, for sure. And you can, once you kind of see like your journey, it's easy to actually look at other players or other coaches and see the same thing. It's like you look at Doublelift, everyone memed him for so long, sure, having no accolades. Bjergsen early on in his career, he also didn't have that many accolades, and then he came to NA and was very good. But there's so many different people that you look at. It's like, damn, like this guy is such an insane player, such an insane coach, and they also struggle at different moments. So, yeah, you gotta put your head down sometimes and put in the work. Not every story ends in a good ending. Sometimes you're going to put in the work, and you're not going to get that opportunity again, or you're not going to pop off and do as well as you hope you do. So it's hard. It's hard to like give advice in that regard. But for sure, like if you want to do something bad enough, you're going to do everything in your power to fucking do that thing. And I'm lucky that in my situation, I was able to put my head down, do the work, get recognized, do very well, and then get another shot. And you have to make the most out of your opportunities. So every time you get an opportunity, don't take it for granted. Fucking use it well, and hopefully you can ride that opportunity to make something that's lasting.
Right. One of the things I know that does sometimes annoy coaches is that people do try to evaluate them like they're players, but obviously we're not seeing the things you're doing. Whereas a player, I can watch his actions, I can even get the pro view and see what the clicks are, and you can hear an interview of what he was thinking. The problem obviously with the coaches, people tend to just go off the resume. They just look at how many times you won, how many championships, and they just assume you're the best coach, right? As someone who has coached against a bunch of people, who's been to Worlds, who's had all the LCS coaches, I know being a rival coach, you get a different sense. You get a feel in the draft, they're like, oh, I can see what he's trying to do there, or he prepared a trap for me there, or he didn't expect that, I just did this. Who is the coach for you, purely subjectively? Who's the most impressive coach you think you've either experienced or coached against? Who stands out for you?
All right, we'll stick with like NA or EU. But I don't know. I think at different points in my career, there have been different people that I respect a lot. So early on, like Zix and Reaper, I got to work with both of them, and that was like incredible. I learned a lot of like their strengths and a lot of their weaknesses as coaches. But I do think there are a lot of coaches that when they came from academy and then were like debuting in LCS, I already knew that they were going to be very good at specific things. And for example, let's talk about Spawn, who's now like the TL head coach. As soon as he came to LCS, I already knew in my head almost every single composition that they made was going to have very good win costs. They're going to have very cohesive comps. They like it. Certain aspects of the game might be a little bit difficult, but there were going to be a lot of strengths. And then if you look at almost all their compositions heading into their games and throughout playoffs, they had very, very strong compositions. So there are certain coaches that like I respect certain aspects of their style. It is hard to just kind of off my head be like, this person was kind of the best. especially in North America, where a lot of what you see is player driven. So yeah.
At the end, I want to do a little thing. I have to do it to a players, but I thought for a coach would be perfect. It's a quick fire round. What I want is just give me a name and then a reason for why. So the first question is, who is the most skilled player you have coached?
Most skilled? Huhi, 100%. Just every aspect of the game. Communication. So a lot of players get frustrated when they're like, oh, my jungler's like not playing around me. It's like, well, what are you communicating? Like, are you like the reason why Huhi got a lot of jungle attention is because he would communicate so well that his jungler knew that almost every time he goes topside, he's going to get rewarded. Whether it's with counter jungling or by getting a kill or getting some turrets or denying waves, like it was obvious that it would pay off. So Huhi, 100%, good mechanically, good communication, good for environment, and he provided his team on a path to win every single game.
Who is the smartest player you've coached?
Oof. Lira in his prime. Lira in 2019, one of the big reasons why they were struggling was because they weren't really listening to him. So a huge thing that I did when I first came in, like I'd listen to a bunch of their games and then was like, all right, guys, like we gotta fucking listen to Lira more. Like you guys aren't playing around his timers. I promise you, he's tracking numbers really well. He understands all these things. We need to give him a bigger voice. And once we did that, he just started popping the fuck off, and he was one of the best junglers in the league, if not the best. And he did well at Worlds against a bunch of other world-class junglers. So I think Lira for sure was one of the smartest.
Who is the most clutch player you have coached?
Oof, that's a good question. Honestly, it might be Devontae. I think Devontae was insanely clutch when it mattered. Actually, now that I say that, I remember one game where he missed a Kiana ult. But just in general, he did really step up when it mattered the most, and that's why like he's had so many crazy just experiences as a player. Like I remember he has like a 1v5 in Academy where he just kills everyone and steals Baron. He had in Clutch Gaming, he had like really good looks on Kiana throughout our entire playoff run, and that would just end the game completely. So I think Devontae was like an insanely clutch player when it mattered.
Who is the best teammate of the people you've coached? As in like the intangibles, or like as a friend to people, or like as a, you know, attitude-wise, not like best player. Who's the best teammate you've coached?
All right. Once again, I think it's Devontae or FBI. I'll give it to FBI just to be different, but when FBI first came to our team, I don't think he was a very good teammate. He honestly thought that communication was overrated and everyone should just know what to do all the time. But once we sold him, just like, dude, like everyone has strengths and weaknesses. Like, in order to make sure we do everything correctly, you might have to cover for your teammate not knowing something. Like, as soon as he bought into that, like nowadays, he is just an insanely good teammate. He will put in energy to lift up someone who's having a bad day. He will try to mediate a conversation to make sure everyone's trying to be logical. He is just, like I said before, he's just so underrated. It's just crazy how much he brings to a team these days.
And who is the funniest player you have coached?
Phoenix.
Even though he's like speaking second language English, what's funny about him? What about his attitude did you vibe with?
He's just so funny. He once he's comfortable, he jokes all the time. He's absolutely hilarious. There are just so many things about him that just don't seem real. Like I remember there's one in Echo Fox, every single day he would rock, paper, scissors, one of our assistant coaches for coffee, and he never lost. He'd win every single time. And anyone, just like there's so many weird things about him that just make him like the funniest character ever.
What about who is the most underrated player you have coached?
Oof. Underrated player. I mean, it's my mid or my jungler right now. Contracts or Palafox still get like no recognition for what they've been able to achieve, and none of them have made All Pro ever.
Okay.
They were one of the best jungle duos in the world last year, and every single time I see any type of rating, it's just like teams just seem to underrate them completely. So I would say it's just my mid jungle, to be honest.
At the end of this interview, do you have a final message? Do you want to thank or say hello to anyone?
Yeah, just thanks for all the energy, fans. You guys are very welcoming. Last split, like I said, we didn't start very well in summer, but we ended very well. And for the most part, this split, I've gotten very positive messages. So even though we're struggling, you guys are just a very wholesome group of people. And we're going to do our best to make you guys proud and do our best to, just for all of LCS, to put on a good show.
In this esports world, it can seem like everyone's against you, but I've always got the Skrilluminati, my Patreon community, riding with me. And it is thanks to the support of the following people, this video and all of them on my channel are made possible. Matt, Pugnacho Rakula, Ahmed Haju, Frisky, Tosh, Jensen Gore, Animosity, Toucan, Tobias Bernasconi. If you've ever watched my videos, you know now I'm going to give a massive shout out to Jerky's Minion, the main man. Do you want to suggest a topic or a guest for my content? You want teasers? Find out who the upcoming interview guests are. Maybe you want to ask me a question. I tend to answer them at length in my video AMA. Do you want to take part in one of those dinner discussions where we talk about what you're interested in esports? Well, if any of these perks or more appeal to you, put your money where your mouth is. Join the Skrilluminati today, where in the description box below is a Patreon link.